My neighborhood probably was some of the poorest of them, but we were, like I say, but we weren't poor. We just some of the poorest because we had a lot of government workers. But anyhow, they would. That's the way they did things. You walk down the street. One of us would get out of line. It was nothing for a neighbor to pull his car over. Say, for example, we walk down the street and throwing rocks at places that we shouldn't be throwing. Neighbor would pull right up and jump right out of his car and just paddle us right down and tell you, you get home and you tell your father, my father's name was Wesley. You go home and you tell Wesley what I did. And you tell him what you was doing. And you better not lie. Because that's the way it was. And it was good. That's my opinion, but a lot of people look down on it, but no. My father raised 11 boys. 11 boys. And none of us never went to jail. And he was a sweet guy. He wasn't, well, they would call it abuse, but he wasn't abusive. He gave you what you asked for, what you deserve. If he said, this is what I want y'all to do, A, Y, and Z. When I come home, I want it done. And that's what he meant. And all of us right today, we talk about our father like he's still living. He's been dead almost 50 years.
Well, you had also mentioned that going to the Fairfax courthouse, that there were signs of segregation even in the courthouse. Oh yeah, right at the front door. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Different lines, if you in there for the same thing in court or whatever, whites up front, blacks in the back. Or when you're going in the lines to pay bills, there's separate lines, roped off lines or whatever. And always I used to hate to go into DMVs, courthouses, because you really was intimidated there. What do you want, boy? What is this? You're like, well, I'm here to pay a bill, please. Let me pay this bill, please. Don't hurt me, and don't make a mistake. Don't hesitate. It will just degrade you. Just degrade you. And you look over and you see them over there taking their time. Can I help you? You have to do this. But with you, it's like you forgot to put a date on it. You didn't put a date. Okay, get out of line. Go over there and put a date on the thing.
And make you go through the line.
Yeah, right back through it again. Okay. Right back. That kind of stuff, and the way they talk to you, and the way they, just over something simple, but some of the worst was in places like that, public places.
When you were walking on the street, like sidewalks and things, did you have to give way to whites or?
Not during my time. Like I say, back to the difference in being up here. They wasn't like that. They didn't expect, and we would do it out of common courtesy more. Say if there was a bunch of women coming down, or a group of them, you might step aside then, but I don't think, at least I didn't do it because I was scared or I had to. It was just common courtesy. But if it was one-on-one or two-on-one, two of them coming down, no, I wouldn't. And like I say, it was because they wasn't like that. And those were during the time that you was supposed to, or you should, but they wasn't quite that racist up here to that degree. Or both things like that, Okay. And when segregated integration rather started, like I say, it was smooth as silk. Because when I sat down in that drugstore, nobody said anything. I got some looks, but nobody said nothing. And then after a while,
they served you?
Yeah, they were they were served me because they had to, but. Like I say, it was like the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And like my cousin was saying, he said, Mike, you have to realize this too. They knew Ewells, there's a bunch of us. There's a bunch of us. Almost all my father's brothers, and all of them had over 10 kids. And my cousin that I was raised with, like one big village, well, it was 15 of them, 12 of us and 15 of them. And he said, well, you got to remember now, Payne Hardware. He said, my daddy made that man a lot of money. My daddy was probably the biggest farmer around.
Your daddy?
Yeah, his father.
Okay.
My uncle, my daddy's brother. And he said, and everybody, which is still this way today, everybody know the Ewells. You can't go anywhere around here and mention the name Ewell that somebody's probably gonna say, "Oh, I know one of them. Went to school with one."
Okay.
And it's still a bunch of us, young.
And you were all landowners.
And we was all landowners, right? A lot of land. A lot of land. This was a pretty interesting story. I was asking my brothers. I was like getting the roads, the name of the roads back then, like Old Centerville Road, and I asked my brother. I said, "What was the name of that road, and what was the name of the area that we lived in?" He said, that the area we lived in didn't have a name, and that road didn't have a name. Old Centerville Road ran right through, right there where my church is at, and part of it's still that.
And what's the name of your church?
Centerville Baptist.
Okay.
And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "That road was actually man-made by our forefathers and our fathers, by horse and buggy, but that was homes built back in that." He said, "The only reason why," I said, "Wait a minute," I said, "the county took care of those roads when I can remember." He said, they just started doing it because there was enough homes in there then that they had to, but they never named it. It just had a route number." Okay. And I said, "Well, what was the name?" Because we called that where I lived at, we used to call it Uniontown, and then we called it Bushtown. And I asked him what was the name of that place, because I wanted to say Uniontown. He said it was called both of them names, but it was. He said, as far as I know, it was still never documented. It didn't have a name. It was a name that we gave them. It was called Uniontown when my dad and them was young, coming up, and when our generation started calling it Bushtown. But it never really had. He said, and as of right now, I don't know if it's really got a name. Now he says it's probably got, well, it's got roads in there now, with street names, so I guess it got names now. Because where I lived at, it's $100,000 homes in there now.
So this was a community, a black community.
It was a black community.
Named Bushtown.
That's what we called it in my generation, and my older brothers, the ones in their 70s, and my father, them, it was called Uniontown. And I thought that was the name, and they changed it. But he said, no, it was just a given name from the blacks.
So how many people lived in Bushtown?
I would say, oh God, it wasn't a whole lot, but quite a few. I'm going to say totally amount of houses. I'm going to say probably 25 or 30.
That's a big community.
Oh yeah, it was pretty big. It was pretty big.
And I've never seen any references of it.
Yeah, it was pretty big. Yeah, it started from like I said, from the tip of once you got out of Centerville and you turned on Old Centerville Road, off of 28, because Old Centerville Road, and that's where they started at. Now that was the first. Okay, the Browns lived in the first, right at the tip of it. Then in between there was two white families that lived in between where we shared and borrowed stuff. First of my uncle with the farm, because they was a farmer. They had farm stuff. And I remember my father used to go up and borrow their horses and their buckboard, their wagon. Because my father and his brother also were butchers, and they used to, in wintertime, they used to do all the slaughtering for people that wanted the pigs killed, and
both white and
like
black.
That. Both white and blacks. At least the whites in our neighborhood, because that was the place to do. Because they had business. They had the vats and all this stuff, and I hated it. It made us, cut wood and stuff like that. But yeah, they did, and they would go up there and borrow this man's, my father. Well, anything he wanted it for. He had two horses. One name was Frank, and one name was Charlie. He used to use them to plow our garden. We used to have like about an acre and a half garden. Because we didn't buy anything. The only thing we bought was what you couldn't make. But other than that, all our veggies, bread, lard, all our meats, we grew all that. We used to call them poor man's farms, meaning that we didn't sell anything. We had some of everything, but it was to eat for us. Because my father and them back then, people didn't make enough money to go grocery shop. First for the amount of kids he had.
What church was involved in Bushtown? What was the?
When you involved in?
Or was there a community church at Bushtown?
Oh yeah, it was.
What was the name of it?
No, when you say community church, what do you mean? Like?
Was there a church that most of those 30 families went to?
Oh yeah. It was called. At that time, I don't think it was called Centerville Baptist, but it was a Baptist church.
Okay.
In fact, it was two churches in there. Not actually in our neighbor. It was one further up near Bull Run. My uncle was the pastor at that church, Uncle Gabe, and the pastor of that church was Reverend Rogers. He was the guy that married me. He was the pastor of our neighborhood church. His name was Frank Rogers. His oldest son was named Frank.
Do you remember the name of the church?
Like I said, this was our neighborhood church. It was, what was that church called? It might have been still called Centerville Baptist, but I can't recall what it was called. The actual name.
So do you think that it seems like segregation or any issues involved with Jim Crow or segregation was when you went outside of your community to the city, like Manassas?
Right. That's right. That's when you noticed some differences because like I say, it wasn't. I wasn't raised up around a lot of white folk. It was predominantly black, but there was a few scattered in there, and it was like what was that guy's name? Because basically all of us, when we was coming up, youngsters, that's where we started our work habits at, working for him on his farm.
He was white.
Because yeah, we was bale hay and all that kind of stuff and whatever else he had to do. There was one guy, I'll never forget this guy because he was the nicest guy. I was a little kid I was always a worker from like about 7 up until I was probably 13 or 14. This guy named was Mr. and Mrs. Reese. 2 real old white couple. Beautiful people. I used to go up there.